Welcome back to Mussar study group for Magan Yushenu. I am Batya Gage and so glad you joined us today. We are studying Bitachon, which is trust in Hashem, and we are in our 6th week. Believe it or not, I can't believe how fast it's going by. We're actually just a very short few days on the downhill side of getting to Shavuot. And it's been a good week. Of course, we had our first Shabbat service, a limited service, but a Shabbat service in the new building, and everything went fairly smoothly, at least in front of the camera. And so it'll be open for all of y'all to come next week and fill up those seats that everybody bought. So hopefully a lot of y'all can make it out.
Exciting.
We finished chapter 3 last week, and he gave us a good summary on page 115. He gave us 5 principles in order to internalize this midot of Bitachon. The first one was that Hashem alone possesses the 7 qualities that are necessary in order to deserve one's absolute trust. And for a couple of weeks, we looked at who is deserving of our trust. And of course, quickly figured out it's really only Hashem who has all the qualities that one possesses of someone that you would want to trust. The second one was Hashem observes a person and is aware of his innermost thoughts, so he knows whether one's trust in him is genuine or not. Basically, he's always watching us. There's no hiding from him. He doesn't turn his face away when we need something. He always is there, always knows, always is aware. And if we could learn to live our lives with that knowledge that we are always in his presence, we'd probably do a lot better. Bitachon number 3, Bitachon calls for placing one's trust exclusively with Hashem. Trusting in him and another entity or a partner undermines Bitachon and is a strong reason to make one meet with failure. So he doesn't share his position in our lives. And so we can't have a backup plan. We can't say, well, I'll trust you, but if it doesn't work out, I've got these other things that I'm going to go to. Number 4, along with Bitachon, one must be vigilant to heed Hashem's will by performing mitzvot and avoiding transgression to the best of one's ability. To do otherwise is hypocrisy. And we kind of looked at a discussion of is the person who sins still deserving of Hashem's care and guidance and mercy? And we kind of looked at that, Hashem has many verses in the Torah that says you need to do this or this is going to happen. And it's all up to Hashem. If he knows some reason why a person deserves mercy, he will give them mercy. But we don't want to get into that area of saying, well, I can go ahead and sin and I'll just trust Hashem to take care of me anyway. We also looked at maybe he's going to get to it here in the very next one. Hashem carries out his decrees in this world through a system of cause and effect. And this requires a person to engage in hishtadlut. That's our personal effort. One must recognize that hishtadlut is a fulfillment of Hashem's will, for he wants man to work for his sustenance, but in terms of results. Hishtadlut is simply a way of bringing into reality that which Hashem has decreed for him. And we kind of talked about in the business world or in other places you may have seen this decision tree or whatever they call it, where if you do this, if this is a yes, then you go down this side. If it's no, you go down this side, or this will happen. And, it changes along the way. And Hashem has put into effect this elaborate system of cause and effect, or this decision tree that you have free will. But if you do this, this is what's going to happen. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. And at any time, he can jump in and save you or help you get back on the right side. But it's all in there in place. He's already put it in place. He's not waiting to see what you do to decide what he's going to do. It's already in there. So this week, we're going to look at chapter 4, And this is actually the longest chapter, so we're probably going to spend a few weeks on this chapter. And he describes, this is where we're going to take Bitachon and how do we put it into effect in our lives? What do we need to do? How do we, what's the real practical application of this? And he has 7 categories in which Bitachon should be applied in our life. First one is health and basic sustenance, additional income, relationships with others, fulfilling personal mitzvot, fulfilling interpersonal mitzvot, and reward for mitzvot. And the last one is the supreme goodness of the world to come. Now, the first 3 categories relate specifically to this world. The next 2 bridge the 2 worlds. And then the last 2 consist of matters relating directly to the world to come. And so he's going to spend chapter 4 discussing each of these in a bit more detail. He says that the proper way to apply Bitachon in any of these areas is, number 1, to rely on Hashem's, to surrender completely to the outcome of whatever he has decreed. Knowing that this decision tree exists, and if you said no, then this result happens, kind of just surrender to that and say, well, that was what was he put into place, and this is why this has come about. Relying on Hashem's decision in every situation. We often want to help him, assist him, give him advice on what we need, what we really want to do, and how he can help us carry it out. But he doesn't need our assistance. So we need to rely on his knowledge, wisdom, and decision. And know that we will not attain through our own effort anything more or less than what he has decreed. What he has decreed is in place. It's already been determined. And the best thing we can do is take advantage of or cause it to come into effect by this cause and effect system that he's put into place. On page 123, note 13, one of the areas in which we're going to look at is whether one lives or dies. I don't know about any of you, but most of us don't really have a lot of control on whether we stay alive or don't. That is totally in the hands of Hashem. And note 13 says, a person will live only as long as Hashem has decreed, will be healthy only to the extent that Hashem has decreed, and will be provided food, clothing, and shelter only in the measure that Hashem has decreed. Nothing anyone can do will lengthen his life beyond the time that Hashem has granted him, nor improve his health or lot beyond what Hashem has decreed. And if one's situation does not seem good, he should trust that Hashem knows that this is what ultimately is for his good or is best for him. There's one. The next is Hashem's control is exclusive. We talked about he's the only one that can manage our lives. He's the only one that is our life's manager. We don't have a backup plan. And just as we don't have control over when we are alive and when we die, serious illness can come upon us. The most healthiest people that are watching everything they eat and exercising and doing everything can succumb to a serious illness, and vice versa. So we don't really have a lot of control over that. He does. Whether we get enough food for the day, whether we get provisions, our home, our livelihood, it's all in his hands alone, in his hands alone. Our effort does not add to that, hello, Devorah, or take away from that. He manages all our affairs and he knows what is best for us. And so we should just surrender to that, to his knowledge, to his wisdom. He knows what is best, and quit fighting against him and just say, surrender to that will. And yet We are required to engage in personal effort in our lives. We don't just sit back and do nothing. We've talked over the last couple of weeks. We have to strive. This is what he put into place. We have to strive to obtain our basic needs, to remain safe, earn a living, maintain health. Um, Note 16 on page 124, the last paragraph there says, this is not to say that Hashem will provide for a person only by way of his efforts. Rather, a person, once he does his part, Hashem will send him provisions in whichever way he deems fit. If a person fails to make the required hishtadlut or effort, there is no guarantee that he will receive what he needs. Hashem may have decreed that unless he worked, he would not survive. But once the person does the proper hishtadlut, um, Hashem guarantees that his essential needs will be met, either in that way or in some other way that Hashem has uh, provided. Doesn't have to necessarily be the way in our job. We may get our sustenance some other way. So preserving one's life is one of the first big categories. And even though our days are allotted and bound by Hashem, we should and are required to pursue ways to stay alive uh, through food, drink, clothing, shelter. We're to take care of our needs. We're to feed ourselves and clothe ourselves and house ourselves. And we should never say, the Creator's going to take care of me anyway. He's going to provide me and preserve my soul, even if I never eat. So I'm just never going to eat again because He'll take care of me anyway. And we should never say that. Likewise, it's improper to endanger our life. And the book says through deadly poisons, unnecessarily battling a lion, casting ourselves into a sea of fire. We could probably add our own to that list. Driving recklessly, um, illicit sex relations. Um, you know, you could probably think of many ways that you could endanger your life recklessly and say, well, Hashem will take care of me. And that's not to
Messiah.
be. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was just going to say what you were talking about. It's kind of one of the reasons that I have the perspective on vaccines that I do, because I've seen how it hurts other people's lives and my kids' lives. So, I mean, if you think about it, God's saying you got to be so careful with what you put in your body. And I think there's also a certain amount of respect that we're supposed to show our body. So,
Hmm.
all of that fits together with what you're saying.
Yes, for sure. Devarim 6:16 says, you shall not test Hashem your God as you tested him at Massah. You may die as a result. He may say, well, that was on, I already had that in place, that if you jump off this cliff, I'm not going to reach out my hand and save you. Uh, you may be held accountable in the world to come for this reckless act that you did in this world. On page 127, the note 21 says, uh, Bakia maintains that no one can kill another person unless the victim was already destined to die at that time. Isn't that an interesting thought? We think this person's life was shortened by this murderer, but he's saying perhaps that was that person's allotted day anyway. However, uh, no one can one can try to kill another person or himself, but Hashem will not let his attempt succeed unless the victim's death was already ordained. Nevertheless, a murderer is still liable to punishment because he chose to kill. It may have been decreed in heaven that the victim should die, but it was not ordained that he must die at the hands of this person. Since the murderer did this vicious act of his own free will, he is liable for it. He says that the one who, let's see, the one who died at the hands of this person, the person that killed him by this means, it's he who did wrong. It's not that he was able to he had the power to shorten this person's life, but rather that he brought about the method that, of course, we know. Shemot 2013 says, you shall not murder. Uh, Hashem will have it perhaps another way for this person to go. Um, and it wasn't by the hands of a murderer. So, what about during the performance of a mitzvah? Let's say you want to do a mitzvah, but it's going to cause some risk. Uh, do you go ahead and do it? Do you? Is that okay? Is are you will you be protected? So we have a story in here on page 129 of Shmuel, and it says that after King Saul failed to fulfill Hashem's commandment to destroy Amalek, that comes from 1 Samuel chapter 15. Hashem instructed him to fill his horn with oil, go to the city of Bethlehem, and anoint one of Yishai's sons. We know later it was David, as Saul's replacement. Shemuel's response and Hashem's reaction to it teach us a powerful lesson. Because a person does not have a right to endanger his life, Shmuel Hanavi says to Hashem, how shall I go? If Shaul finds out, he will kill me. And his response was not considered a deficiency in Hashem's eyes. To the contrary, the nature of Hashem's reply indicated that his conscientiousness in this regard to keep himself safe was a good thing. He says, take a young bull and say, I have come to bring an offering to Hashem. So he's kind of given him an out. And he added the rest of the instructions in that passage. His reply clearly indicates that that this concern for his life was justified. It was okay to be concerned about, hey, Hashem, I'll do this, but this is risky, and I'm not supposed to, put myself in danger. Hashem's response could have been, I put to death and I bring alive, I smite and I heal, or he could have rebuked him for having such little faith, but he doesn't. Let's see. He says instead, fill your horn with oil and go forth, and I shall send you to Bethlehem. So he was not getting on to him for having these concerned thoughts. In the note, let's see where, okay, page 30, page, let me get it right, 131, the note at the bottom. Because Shmuel could think, okay, I'm going to do this anyway. I'm not even going to be concerned, and Hashem will protect me. Or instead of having the attitude that he did. But Radak and others explained that although Hashem performs miracles for his faithful ones when necessary, it is inappropriate for them to rely on it. So if Shmuel had just been, okay, I'll go do it. If this isn't my day to die, Hashem will protect me. That would have been a little bit of the wrong attitude as well. So it's inappropriate for us to rely on miracles. Miracles come, yes, we can pray for miracles, but we can't rely on them and put ourselves at risk. Rather, their duty is to take normal precautions so that they can carry out Hashem's command within the natural parameters of the world's operation. This incident of Shmuel is but one of countless instances of the righteous employing natural means to fulfill Hashem's word. And he goes on and gives some other examples there. So thus, when Hashem says to Hashem, how can I go? If Shaul finds out, he will kill me. He was not balking at Hashem's command, but was asking in what manner he could perform the mission without endangering himself, so he would not be relying on a miracle. And so, yes, we go ahead. It's okay to say, okay, Hashem, this is risky and I'll do it, but you're going to have to show me how to do this in a safe way. Shabbos 32a says, a person should never stand in a dangerous place and say that a miracle will be performed for him and he will be saved, because perhaps a miracle will not be performed and he will die. And then it would be, they say, deducted from his merits. So if we are building up merits for the world to come, as we do mitzvot in this world, if we need a really big favor from Hashem because we've really messed up, it could be deducted from those merits that we've already piled up in Shemaim, and we don't really want to do that. That's a great price to pay. Now before we go into the next topic, let's talk a little bit about pikuach nefesh, and this is Hebrew for life over law. Yes, we should do our very best to do mitzvot, but if it comes down to saving a life or doing the mitzvah, we've all been taught life over law. However, we have to remember that there are four exceptions that he doesn't really talk about in the lesson. So I went and looked them up to make sure I knew exactly what the four were. And they are murder, idolatry, incest, and adultery. Anything else, it would be life over law. But if it comes down to you murdering and someone's holding a gun to your head and telling you to murder someone else, then you go ahead and give up your life. Or idolatry, or incest, or adultery. So, in these four areas alone, are you okay to risk your life to do a mitzvah? Just those four. Okay, let's talk again about our job, earning a basic living. We keep coming back to this. We should make a proper effort and choose the best option in each circumstance, obviously. So he gives us a couple of illustrations. And the first one is on page 133, and that is of the farmer. We understand, many of you, at least what it takes to make a garden, and just multiply that many times over by a farm. You got to till the ground, you got to clear it of thorns and rocks, you got to provide water, you got to plant the seed, keep the weeds out. There's all these things that are your part to do. But then you have to rely on Hashem's bringing the proper rain, keeping the hail away, keeping the, anything else that would keep it from yielding produce. In the same way, and it would be wrong for the farmer to say, this is my field, Hashem, you do with it what you want, and I'll pick the fruit at the end of the season. That's not the way that Hashem has designed our life to be. And he talks the same way, he said the same way, the craftsman who's doing things, building things with his hands, he's commanded to seek sustenance through his vocation while maintaining reliance on Hashem. Even as we work, though, we remember that our sustenance is not from our hands, but it's from Hashem. And Hashem, it's in his control. If we go and we work and we build something to sell and it just doesn't make it, Hashem will, maybe he had another way in mind, already planned out. Hashem will provide our sustenance, whether it's through our chosen vocation or another way. If successful, we don't trust in that job. We don't say, I'm going to trust in what my hands can build and that, nothing else. But because this will weaken our reliance on Hashem. This will weaken our Bitachon instead of strengthen it. And we should never think that if we work harder, we'll get more, because Hashem has already determined this is what you're going to get. So, you being a workaholic and not doing anything else, it's not going to get you any more than what Hashem has already decreed for you. And he shouldn't think, well, I made such a wise choice of my job and vocation. That's why I'm so successful. The reason you were so successful is because Hashem decreed you to be successful, not because you were a great craftsman or a wonderful farmer or you chose the best job out of the college career book. Our proper response then, when we are successful, is thank you, Hashem, that you brought this success to me. Psalm 128:2 says, when you eat the labor of your hands, you are praiseworthy, and it is well with you. Now, on page 135 through 137 is I like this little antidote that they give. It says, one of the pious men once said, I marvel at one who gives his fellow what the Creator has already decreed he should have, and later reminds that fellow of his favor to him and expects him to be thankful for it. So, I go and I do a favor for a friend, and that was what was already decreed for that person to have. If I didn't give it to him through my hands, he would have gotten it through someone else. Hashem doesn't necessarily need your hands. And so there's no reason for me to remind that person, hey, remember that favor I did for you? That's just silly. And I marvel even more at one who receives his sustenance through another person who was, in my case, compelled by divine decree to give it to him, and who then humbles himself to the benefactor and flatters him and praises him as if it was the benefactor who provided it. So neither shall someone do a favor for me, and now I'm beholding to you forever. I flatter you, I do whatever. So because you were the one that benefited me, not Hashem. And it goes on and says, in the same way, we can marvel at a person who receives his livelihood through a certain occupation and becomes so enamored with it, it's as if it is the source of his success, when in truth, he should attribute everything to the one who made it succeed. But there's always another hand. So it sounds like, okay, you do me a favor. I don't thank you because it came from Hashem, um, and vice versa. But is so we just don't thank each other anymore? No. The other hand, there's a long note on page 136, and I won't read it all. You can do that. But it says that Rabbi Yaakov Emden cautions against using this passage of Baki as an excuse to neglect giving proper thanks to a kind benefactor. The sages attach great importance to acknowledging any kindness that is done for us. But it says that the key is to understand why and for what we should give thanks and deserve thanks. Surely Hashem is the one who made certain that the needy one received the assistance he required. Hashem provided the benefactor the means to help, and if he had failed to assist, Hashem would have sent the needy one his aid through another avenue. However, the benefactor had the free will to either carry out the mitzvah of helping him or ignore that mitzvah. So he is owed thanks for choosing to help when he could have refused to do so. A recipient of kindness must thank Hashem for the kindness itself and thank the benefactor for his kind heart and for being a worthy emissary of Hashem's kindness. So, yes, we still say thank you for being obedient to Hashem, for using your free will in that way, and then thank Hashem for sending that person my way to help me out, or our job, or anything else. So he talks just very briefly about what if we're not successful? What if our farm fails, our job goes away? What then? Um, he should tell himself, perhaps I have already received my sustenance for that day, or Hashem will bring it in another way. So we don't need to be distraught and worried and I have failed. I did my best, and now Hashem will provide another way. Our provision is not dependent on our success or our lack of success. And he says, don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. But he says, but we still need to persevere in our efforts. So it's certainly a balance between trusting in Hashem and doing my part, and both of those coming together. Colossians 3:23 and 24, I often, especially when I worked, would think of this verse often, especially when I was having a difficult day at work. Whatever you do, do it as unto the Lord and not for people, because you'll receive your reward from Hashem, not from the people. So I don't get my sustenance from this person. I get my sustenance from Hashem. So I work as if I'm working for him. And it doesn't matter whether you're cleaning toilets or advising people on how to make millions or planning a farm. Do it as if you were actually working for Hashem. He says, don't lose heart. Continue working at your chosen vocation. Don't give up. Don't slacken. He said, it's okay to reevaluate. Is this job suited for me and my physical abilities? And is it consistent with my faith life? But he says, trust in Hashem. He will not forsake you, but he will send you your livelihood in some way. And we're going to end with this verse today, Nahum 1:7. Hashem is beneficent, a stronghold on the day of distress, and mindful of those who take refuge in him. So it's certainly a balance between doing our part and trusting in Hashem, thanking others for being obedient to him, and then turning around and thanking him. All right, I'm going to stop a little early tonight because I have a little treat for you. Leah has done such a good job filling in for me. I have asked her, starting now, to do the second part of our class on the Torah Mussar commentary, and she reminded me that I left off one last week, so she's going to try to cover a couple, I think, couple of chapters in that book, and I peeked ahead at tonight's chapter, and I already know what it's about. So one of our favorites. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and I'm going to mute my mic and be a student.
I'm right there with you, Miss Bite. Yeah, I was reading these and I was like, oi, oi vey. And, actually, I've been really encouraged by how much the Torah commentary book lines up with the Bitachon book. So let's go through this. The first one that we're going to go through is the Bahukotai. I have a hard time saying some of these. That was the one that we did last Shabbos, but it's for simplicity, and it's hista histopkut. I'm just going to say simplicity. So recognizing our blessings. And this was really interesting. He starts talking about the meaning of the word histopkut is from the Hebrew word meaning enough, not simplify or whatever. It means enough. And from that we derive simplicity. And this enough is the antithesis of greed. So you have too much greed in your life, the cure is simplicity. Where greed breeds insatiable desire, simplicity enables a person to experience satisfaction. Interestingly, when we practice simplicity, we give thanks, or we give things away and feel a greater joy than an increased yearning. So, I mean, that's kind of odd. Usually when you think you're giving things away, you're kind of like, well, I'm losing things. I'm in a deficit now. And I need to fill that void or space with something else. But he's like, no, if you're practicing simplicity, then you're going to feel overjoyed about being able to give things away and not like you're missing out on anything. He talks about the parasha begins with a promise and a threat. The promise is to ensure us that we will derive satisfaction in major areas of our lives should we walk faithfully in Torah. The threat details the countless forms of discontent we will experience should we turn away from a life of Torah. And then he goes on further to expound on this. We all have experienced blessings in our lives that we know we did not deserve. We did not do anything to merit the amount of blessing we got in whatever situation. But we've also witnessed curses that grievously proportionate to someone's misdeeds. And we also tend to go through life, with whatever life experiences come our way or circumstances that come our way. And even though we know that everything comes from Hashem, we still react as like, this is happening to us and my actions didn't have anything to do with it. And so the goal here is to be able to see everything that happens to you as a blessing instead of a curse. And this ability in and of itself is what simplicity is, and it is in itself a blessing. Because when you can perceive the things that come to you, whether they may seem like a good thing or a bad thing, and you are able to accept it as a blessing, then you're going through life being blessed. But if you're perceiving it as a curse, you're going to end up being discouraged and frustrated and all those negative things that we're trying to walk away from. The big thing I pointed out, I saw myself, is notice how these are all perspectives. And that's the really interesting thing in this Torah portion too, is this all about perspective. It's all about how you see it. When your basic needs have been met, are you able to feel satisfied and joyful? Do you feel the compulsion to chase endlessly after all that you desire and end up feeling some amount of suffering at the end, and end up causing more damage than going without would have caused? I don't know about you guys, but I kind of do both of those. um, at first look, when we look at the parasha, it seems to say that all the blessings that we will get if we walk that life of Torah are all directed towards our physical body. But then when you look at the curses, they're not necessarily directed at your physical body. They seem to have to do a lot with perspective. So what the author does is he goes back and revisits those blessings and says, wait a minute. And so one of the things that I did is I drew up a little chart where I compared them, because when you look at this, let me see if I can find a good spot where he points this out. Okay, so when we read you shall eat your fill of bread and dwell securely in your land, which is Leviticus 26:5. uh, a reasonable understanding is that we are being reassured of sufficient food and lack of violent enemies, or at least a strong protection from such enemies should they exist. Similarly, I would grant peace in the land, and you shall lie down untroubled by anyone. Might indicate that no one will seek to threaten or harm us, no matter or harm us, or that no one will succeed in doing so, especially since this blessing is followed by examples of military victories. Yet, what physical circumstances could be described by the curse, I will wreak misery upon you? Also translated, I will direct panic against you, or the threats of despair and despondency, and some in the same verse. So basically, he's showing that, wait a minute, all these first ones seem to be about your body, all the second ones, all the curses seem to be about how you're perceiving things. So then he goes back and looks at the blessings again, and he says, the blessing, you shall eat your fill of bread, takes on a new layer of meaning when juxtaposed against the curse, and though you eat, you shall not be satisfied. Apparently, one's fill of bread refers to more than just the quantity of food available or consumed. Indeed, Rashi taught that a single grain would become blessed when consumed. In other words, the amount of food would not change, but rather the effect on the person eating it would change. So let me see here. So when you think about this, if you're being said that you're gonna, if you keep to Torah, you're going to be satisfied with what you have. You will not only be safe, but feel safe. But if you don't keep to Torah, we're told you're going to be in misery. You'll have panic directed at you, threats of despair, despondency, fleeing when no one chases you, and faintness of heart. All of these things are about perspective. So when we practice simplicity, we are able to have the right perspective. In order to increase our midot of simplicity, we can attach it to another midot that we are already strong in. And the author gave the example of gratitude. Any of these any of the things that we would have said Dayenu in the Pesach Seder would not have freed us from Egypt. But in and of themselves, they are worth our telling God thank you and being grateful for it. In the same way, any of these blessings that he says he will give us if we walk a life of Torah are worthy of us saying thank you, Dayenu. It would be enough, you know. The real blessing is to actually be able to live with what we have right now and to live with what we are right now. Our imperfect bodies, our imperfect minds, our imperfect lives can be enough when we know that we are blessed beyond compare. When we know this, we're blessed beyond compare. So that is the nuts and the bolts of simplicity. How much time do I have left? Okay. um, then we moved on to the one for this week that we are just starting, which is Bamidbar. We're entering to the book of Numbers. And for this one, it is Seder, which means order, the measure and ideal of Midot. And this one was very intriguing. So was the last one. I say that to all of them, though. Just like I like all of Hillel's songs. I can't help it. In this parasha, it talks a lot about how God is ordering and counting the people of Israel. And as we all know, we're not supposed to count the people of Israel. So God does this in a way that is very intriguing. And the author here, this author is Rabbi Avi Fertig, and he brings this out really well. I like to start out with this part with a quote that he gives from Rabbi Simcha Zissel Brody, who was the altar of Kelm. He says, a person is like a strand of precious pearls with many natural abilities, intellect, midot, and exalted qualities. Order, or Seder, is like the clasp that holds the strand of pearls together. Without order, all of a person's exalted qualities will be wasted and the person will be left empty. Order is not just an external matter, which is what this is teaching us, but it is a vital aspect of our personality and a mirror to our innermost self. If something is out of order in your external life, it is a sign that something is wrong. Uh-oh. Sorry. Sign that something is wrong within your inner world. The altar of Kelm summed it up by saying, external order brings us to think clearly and act with restraint. In Israel, when you ask someone how they are doing, they will respond by saying, Hakol Beseder, which means everything is in order. And the rabbi who wrote this, Rabbi Fertig, is saying that he lives in Israel and that's what they say to each other. But then he goes on and talks about how Rabbi Brody is saying more than we need to be organized. He's saying that an ordered life allows one's abilities to be properly expressed. So yes, it's important to be organized in your outside life, but it's also a mirror of what your inside life is like. If you're not organized outside, your inside is probably not organized either. And he's saying that it's kind of like the end cap. Like I don't know if you guys have ever had like a inexpensive string of pearls and you lose that last knot at the end and they all fall off. That's one of the ways you know if you got real pearls or not, because real pearls, they have a tie after each one, but the whole string will fall off, and that's what he's alluding to here. So when you look at the parasha and we see Hashem's way of having order, we all know that Hashem does not permit his people to be counted. For example, in a couple of parashas ago, when they were making the Mishkan and everybody brought their half shekel, I believe that was in Shemot, not Parasha Shemot, but the book of Shemot. They all brought their half shekel, and it was the half shekels that were counted. So the people themselves were not counted. And this was to preserve the individual uniqueness of each person, instead of just them being like a number on a shelf. I mean, how many of us have said that before? I've said that lots of times. You know, I didn't like to go to that church or whatever because I just felt like a number. The point is, though, is that God doesn't want us to feel that way. He wants us to feel special and unique and individual. But at the same time, we're a part of a larger community. And so he says, he gives this long explanation about how the Nazis, when they would tattoo numbers on the people, what they were doing is removing their identity and their uniqueness. But Hashem's way does not steal an individual's identity, but carefully balances that individualness within the greater community. And that's what happens here in this parasha when we look at how the people are ordered in their camps, and within their camps, each person's ordered, and each person knows what their job is and their role is. Each camp knows what their job and role is, so on and so forth. Rabbi Elihu Dessler identified the highest level of order as order for the sake of unity and function. At this level of order, separate components are organized and connected in such a way that they blend into a unified whole. The order of the Israelite camps described in the Torah is an illustration of this highest form of order. And then another quote from Rabbi Dessler is the separation of an individual from and the separation of different groups prevents the reaching of goals. However, mixing them all together into a unified mass is also not good. Rather, the optimal system is when each individual uses their unique midot and abilities, directing these abilities to one purpose, to the whole. To reach a spiritual wholeness, each individual learns from one another. The Torah's unique description
I was just
of
going to interject real quick. It
Mhm.
reminds me of when the Brit Hadashah or the Besorah talks about we're not all ahead, we're not all afoot. If we were,
Right.
we couldn't do anything. We couldn't reach our goals or function. But we have to all do our individual parts and then come together.
That's a really good point, Miss Bay. I didn't even think about that. That's excellent. Um, the Torah's unique description of the ordered encampments teaches us that while each of us is unique, we acquire and express our unique abilities precisely when we function as part of a larger order. One's unique abilities and strengths are to be valued, especially as they are given toward the greater community. The deep lesson from the Torah Seder or order is that every midot requires careful balance. Each midot can be used in a positive or negative way. So what he was driving at here is that while we need to respect the individualness and we need to apply our individualness to the greater community, we also have to recognize that Seder or order, just like any of the other midot, taken to an extreme is bad. You know, so I mean, like you pointed out earlier, the Nazis were very ordered. And it was not for a good purpose, you know. So we don't want to be so ordered that we can't function, but at the same time, we need to have a sense of order so that we can function. And I saw a picture this week of Albert Einstein's desk the day after he had died, and it looked like a real hot mess. And I felt a little bit better about my own desk. I was like, but this man was a genius, and he had so much going on in his head, and he could totally find anything he needed to find in his mess. So order, I would say, is probably different from one person to the next, and each one of us knows what kind of order that we need in our life. However, we have to remember that we are part of a larger community, and I think that that's one of the really exciting things when you think about it, as we're coming together in our new building and coming together as a Magniashtianu, we are also being able to bring in those different midot and talents and skills that we have to benefit our whole community. So that's what I have, Miss Baya. I think we still have time for questions.
I was just going to add that, each week when I sit down to start the video, I look through my camera lens to see what y'all can actually see to make sure it's ordered and neat and clean. But if you could look under my desk, there's like this, I don't even know what to call it, a mass of wires going in 40 million directions. And if I touch one wire, I don't even know what would happen. It's a mess. But I try to make sure that that what you at least see on the screen is like neat and ordered, but it's not always that way all the way through. Very good job.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody have any questions, or would you like to make any comments? Now's the time you can unmute your mic and
Unmute
say
your
what you
mics. If nobody else is going to say anything, y'all are going to make me sing to Hadass. So y'all don't. Happy birthday, Hadass.
Yes, happy birthday.
Yesterday was Hillel's and today is Hadass.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You leveled up today.
I hope you're having a good birthday.
I am. I'm having a great time.
Mother's Day and birthday together.
Yep, I like to do that every once in a while. It's really fun.
My daughter has her some years her birthday, anniversary, Mother's Day all fall on the same day, and she's like, wow. I only get one gift though.
Yeah, that's how they do it.
Yeah,
but that's okay. Good to know you're loved.
You can see who else is on here. Oh, hello, Hefzibah. I didn't see you were on here with us, and Elizabeth, always glad to have you. I happen to know a little secret about Hefzibah. She's got a big event coming up here in just a very few short weeks. You want to tell us? Are you still there? If not, I'll tell on you. Oh, she's gonna jump in.
Go ahead and tell them if you want to. I'm listening to you while doing psychology homework.
Oh my goodness, you are multitasking. Yes, she and her husband are going to have a full wedding vow renewal of their wedding vows. I guess it'll be here at our place in the country, and hopefully we're praying for not too hot but not rainy weather on that day, because it'll be outside. So
wonderful.
Coming up in early June.
Oh, I can't wait to see pictures.
Yes.
Me too. I love pictures. Especially wedding pictures.
Oh, I know.
I guess that means I'll have to find a photographer.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Something else.
What you could do, Hefzibah, is you could get those little disposable cameras and hand them out and let everybody take candid ones.
That's
always fun.
Yeah, that would probably do that.
All right. Anybody else have anything about anything or the lesson or anything? Oh, question for y'all. Next Sunday is Erev Shavuot. You think we should skip a week and just focus on Shavuot? Okay. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, that works.
It's going to be a full weekend of things, and you probably have maybe things going on where you are, and I know they're going to have service at the new building on Monday morning, and so you may be busy making your cheesecakes and
or buying them.
Yeah, okay.
Eating them.
All right, then let's take a break next week, and we'll come back in 2 weeks, and onward and upward.
Thank you, Batya. Thank you, Leah.
I will try to get this posted tomorrow and share with those that could have joined us live.
Thank you so much.
Okay, have a great week, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Rachel, can you hear me?
Okay. Am I interrupting something?